it might be helpful to start with how is gestural drawing different to any other type of drawing. It really is a word to describe a loose style of drawing that captures a sense of movement, a sense of activity. It has a dynamic feel, as opposed to a very carefully drawn, accurate, highly detailed drawing where precision and accuracy is the focus. Now, in lots of ways, gestural drawing suits moving subjects, dancers, animals, and so forth, the wind in the trees. However, architecture is still a great subject because in some ways we're used to seeing architecture drawn in a very precise way. The term architectural drawing conjures up drawing boards and drawing instruments. So when we draw gesturally, when we draw architecture gesturally, we're really wanting to capture the feel, the look overall, rather than the precision. And certainly we're going to draw it freehand, regardless of what we're using to draw it with. We don't want to use rulers, even for very long straight lines, which obviously can arise in architecture, because that's going to give a sense of drafting, a sense of architectural design. And also, those lines won't go particularly well with our loose freehand lines. So drawing freehand is important. Holding our pen loosely is important. Holding it back from the tip. Nothing's going to make our drawing tighter and less gestural if we're holding our fingers right down near the nib of the pen, regardless of the type of pen. We want to hold the pen loosely and we want to create movements with our whole arm, preferably from our shoulder, but certainly from our elbow. We can't really draw gesturally if we're just drawing from our fingers. So relaxed, casual lines are what we're after. I'm using a 0.2 millimeter pen here, a Copic multiliner, and you can see that I started with the central portion because I find starting in the center is a great place, drawing freehand, because as we move out in all directions, if we become a little less precise, then those imprecisions don't add up as much before we get to the end of the drawing. But if we start at the bottom and work up, then we spread those increasingly less accurate estimations over a greater distance, and therefore their impact can be greater. But I also choose a spot that I think I can draw relatively accurately, relatively easily as well, because the first thing I draw will be my reference point for everything else that I draw. And one of the good things about architecture is if we get the first part we draw correct, and therefore it's always worth a little more time on that first part to make sure it's correct. If we get that first part correct, we then can reference off that in all direction. We can use that to align the parts we haven't yet done and to help us estimate distances. In a sense, it becomes our ruler. So that's my aim anyway. If you're finding these thoughts helpful, if you're enjoying this drawing demonstration, then please hit the like button for me right now. That would be a great help. And if you've got ideas for videos that you think I may not have produced yet, then please leave me a comment. That would be great. So, continuing, this is actually the town hall, the former town hall, I think, of the New South Wales regional city of Goulburn. And I just love the effect of the brickwork with the sun on it. This would actually be a great watercolour subject, wouldn't it? Just because of that wonderful terracotta orange that we have. I did have some problems with it, however. When I was moving to the left and to the right of the centre, the lampposts and the flags were in very awkward spots in terms of they hid some of the architecture of the building in crucial spots. And I did come to grief a bit with that. It affected the way I did the outside on both of the wings, if you like. However, in a building such as this, the important thing where the building is symmetrical is that we make it feel as symmetrical as we can. And so if something's a little bit inaccurate on one side in terms of, say, width, then we're better off creating the same inaccuracy on the other side. That's almost certainly at the end going to draw less attention than if we do the other side more accurately, and therefore it looks different. But for now, I'm blissfully unaware of all that's going to happen. It took me 50 minutes in real time to draw this. But there was probably a good 10 minutes of that where I'd slowed down or stopped while I was actually trying to work out what was happening behind the flagpoles, behind the cast iron light lamps in the street. It seems also obvious now that I finished the drawing, but that's how it goes, isn't it? So another thing I find works well with gestural drawing is to use shadows to define form rather than line at times. In effect, creating negative space, working on the spaces and how they look between architectural elements, particularly where the sun is high and we can have long shadows with architecture where the sun's coming more or less straight down, and so therefore there's lots of shade and shadow in the recesses. It's a very effective way of giving the architectural detailing visual impact without having to do heavy lines to describe it, which can create a very artificial look if we're not careful. So now I'm trying to work out the widths. It was fine on the center side of each side window. It was when I tried to work out what was happening pushing past that window that it became difficult. I think part of my appeal for this was that it reminded me very much of the original town hall in the part of Sydney where I grew up. This one is a bit earlier. This was built in 1887. The one that was demolished during my teenage years for a brand new civic centre, that one was, I think, 1903, something like that. Of course, I'm old enough now that the big brand new civic centre has also been demolished and replaced with a new civic centre. So that's the way it goes. So drawing fairly briskly is important. It's draw quickly, no regrets style, I often think of it as. And by that I mean we do our lines, we hold the pen loosely but still securely, we move our whole arm, we get nice, brisk, fairly quick lines, and they're not all going to be exactly. And what I also do then is I create multiple lines. I don't want multiple lines over every line, but it can be very helpful in creating a sense of movement to actually have more than one line. I think it's because the eye then can be jumping between two lines quite close or two lines that might cross at some point that really are defining the same thing. That helps to create a sense of movement. So now I'm doing some hatching just to get some values and some sense of three-dimensionality into this. And the same for the doorway. My centre arches are probably slightly too wide, I suspect. And my two wings are not quite wide enough, so There you go. But this is why I often talk about it can be very helpful to draw the same subject twice. And that's not such a hard thing to do if it's a subject that we enjoy. Because by the time we get to the end of our first drawing, we're fully aware now of the traps that this particular structure or subject or angle of photography has for us. We're more aware of what we didn't work out properly and what we need to do now. I'm just amazed that when I look at this now that I hadn't worked out that the outer, if you like, side piece of each of the side windows is the same width as the inner. It's so clear now looking at this, having tried to sort through it while I was drawing it. But it wasn't so clear for different reasons when I was drawing it. So if I were drawing this again, that would be very easy, very straightforward now. And I wouldn't have to take that 10 minutes, which has been sped up for you. You're watching this at 3 times the normal drawing speed. So if you'd like to see it at a slower speed, use that cog icon that you can see there on the screen, and you can reduce the speed to half speed, down to a quarter speed if you want. But I don't think there's any value in watching it slower than it took me to draw it. So now down the front we have these low hedges that just make a nice contrast always to the architecture, I think. Now with gestural drawing, it's not really an issue with this one because we're looking front on. But if perspective angles are an important part, a significant part, or really any part of the scene, then it's really important that we get those angles correct. Gestural drawing doesn't mean careless perspective angles, because that will still look not right. It won't look like a stylistic choice, it'll look like a mistake. And that's always distracting from our scene. We can still draw the lines in a nice loose style. And probably if the angles aren't quite precise, that's not so much a problem as long as all of the angles fit into the fan pattern that I talk about for perspective angles, that as they move away from the eye level, or the horizon line if you call it that, they will increase in angle in one direction or in the other direction. The lines are never parallel. So I find if we do that, if the angle isn't quite right, it will still look approximately correct in an undistracting way. But despite the issues I had trying to visualize what was happening and the ways that misled me behind the lampposts and the flagpoles, which you'll notice I chose not to put the flagpoles in. But despite that, really had a nice time drawing this. It was a very relaxing drawing session, and at the last minute I saw the shadow under that front balcony and thought, oh yeah, I better do that. And then we're just about done. Hope you have a go drawing this. Please hit the like button if you didn't earlier and you've got to this point. This reference will be on my channel community page, so you can take a screenshot of it there and have a go drawing it yourself. I realised that I hadn't put this shadow down here. If we want to capture the effect of a hot sunny day, then we want to have nice dark shadows and then lots of white paper to contrast them. And I straightened a few lines at the last minute. So that's it. Take off the tape and we're done. I'm certainly happy with the way it looks and the way it feels, and that's important for a gestural drawing, even if it is slightly inaccurate. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Hope you found this interesting. Hope you have a go. Hope I've warned you off the pitfalls that I fell into. But whatever happens, learning to draw gesturally is a great ability, a great technique to have in our drawing toolkit, especially when time is short. But whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.